Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of Movies for Dumb Guys. I'm your dumb guy host, Joe Johnson, and as always, I am joined by Ryan Sharp.
Fire bad.
Tim Williams.
Screonk.
I'll have to ask you about that one later. And Rich Rollins.
It's me, Pete. It's me.
All right. So, recently, a big summer blockbuster movie was released starring The Rock, who is in pretty much every movie that's ever released, called Rampage, based on the video game, which I vaguely remember. Video games have a fairly awful track record at the movie theater. And this would also fall into the monster movie theme, which was going to be the theme of our show today. But before we get into our all-time favorite monster movies, I want to ask these guys what they thought of Rampage. Now, I have not seen it. I need to be sold by the trailer, and the trailer did not suck me in. As a matter of fact, I thought the movie looked god-awful, and going by the score on Rotten Tomatoes, I think my opinion was justified. But let's find out what these guys thought of Rampage quickly. Ryan, what did you think of Rampage?
I thought best picture by far, Oscar winner. No, I'm kidding.
You're on drugs, boy.
You're serious.
You want to
Don't
stay
lie,
on this
you're
podcast,
serious.
stay off the drugs.
Hey, man, Rock for president. But only if he's in a role like Rampage. So, no, it was mildly entertaining. Had good parts, had bad parts. More bad than good. So, when you say blockbuster, I tend to go more towards the busted side of that.
Yeah, Tim, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, my policy is I do not see movies with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in it, and I do not see movies based on video games. But trumping that is my love for kaiju and giant monster movies. So I felt like I had to see it as a completist, and I was not expecting much, and it didn't even meet my expectations.
Wait, you don't like The Rock?
No,
What about Moana?
never seen it.
I never saw
I
that.
don't, I
either.
don't see movies.
No,
with
I
The
love
Rock.
me some Rock. I liked. I liked.
I love me some rock.
Pacific. What was the earthquake movie?
San Andreas.
San Andreas. I like San Andreas. I liked his contribution to the Fast and Furious movies.
Baywatch?
Baywatch actually that was pretty damn funny.
Okay, I might go see
Um,
Skyscraper.
Okay,
I like
yeah,
Baywatch.
Towering
so next
Inferno.
one.
That's cute.
So
What's
I-
up?
And Jumanji, I thought he did a great job in Jumanji.
I haven't
yeah.
seen Jumanji yet. I don't.
Get
I
Shorty,
just
he was
normally
great in
don't
Get
see
Shorty.
movies with The Rock in 'em. I didn't like him when he was a wrestler. I
Be cool.
don't like.
Oh, be
But
cool.
the monsters were cool.
Now, let me ask
I
you
liked
this.
the monsters in it.
How did Rampage stack up to Kong Skull Island? Because you like
Kong
that
Skull
movie.
Island blows that out of the water.
Really?
Oh
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah. Then
easily.
you just clinched it for me.
Rampage
I'm gonna
wouldn't
save
even-
me $10.
Yeah, I mean it's just so cliche ridden and some of the worst acting I've seen in a movie in a long
Wow.
time.
All right, Richard, your thoughts?
Well, I tell you, jabronis, right now, I'm sitting with a bunch of jabronis in here. The Rock says, know your role and shut your holes. It was a good movie. I enjoyed it. I had fun at it. It didn't. I went in with low expectations, so it didn't even exceed those expectations. But I had fun watching it. The monsters are great. The Rock was funny. The supporting cast was funny. It was a good movie all around.
He had fun because he saw it with me.
There you
It was the company you keep.
There was some good death
I-
scenes. That's about all.
That's
I'll
how
say.
rumors get
Yeah.
started when you start saying stuff like that when people can't see us.
And Ethan, they can see. Go
I
to
can't
YouTube.
smell what you're cooking there, Rich. But
You should smell what I'm cooking.
I've smelled.
I will
what
lay
Rich is
it to
cooking,
smack
and it's
it down
disgusting.
on every jabroni in this
Usually
room.
vegan. Gross.
All right, so that kind of sets the tone for today's podcast.
I wasn't done.
Coinciding, yes, you are. Coinciding with the release of Rampage, we had a discussion about what today's topic should be. And originally, we were going to go with kaiju movies, but I don't know if we were all going to be able to come up with a favorite list. So we expanded it, we broadened it to monster movies. Now, the question is, before we get into our list, I'd like to get your input on this. How do you define a monster movie? Now, in my opinion, monster movie has to have a threatening menace in it. It could be supernatural, it could be otherworldly, but it could also possibly be some existing creature from nature.
Sasquatch.
It has to have a terror element to it. And the key characters need to be in danger. There has to be some sort of a threat to the main characters. So that's kind of how I define a monster movie. Can you guys add anything else to that? Ryan, how do you define a monster movie? What makes a monster movie?
No, I think you kind of pretty much, explained how I feel as well. I might be a little more forgiving with some things as to what's a monster movie or not, or what's a monster. It's not hard to get into that category for me, I guess. So, which you'll see in my list.
Tim, you at first you basically said, well, monsters are kaijus, large giant creatures. Are you standing by that?
No, not at all.
Okay.
No, I don't think I said that. I think I just
Fake
threw
news.
that out there.
Hashtag fake news.
No, I think I just thought that would be a good topic when I threw that out there, but I wasn't saying that all monsters movies are kaiju movies. Not at all.
So
not at all.
throw some monsters at me.
Well, obviously Godzilla, King Kong,
Kaijus.
Harry from Harry and the Hendersons.
I was gonna say that.
Bigfoot, okay, yeah.
Bigfoot, yeah.
Mysterious monsters.
Could be a lot of things. Q the winged serpent, not Q, but Q the winged serpent, and Gremlins. I mean, it can run the gamut.
Okay.
The
Rich?
crate monster from Creepshow.
How do you define a monster movie?
He basically just went into my mind and he pulled it out. So Tim's like a monster in that sense.
All right, there you go. You got some supernatural powers. there.
Yeah, I could also go monsters, or it could be people too in their actions.
Well,
None of those are on my
see,
list, but I'm
right.
saying like
What about the movie monster?
they're yeah. Well, I mean, she looked kind of
right.
hideous, but
But
So-
since you brought it up,
What
let's
do you mean, like
Silence of the Lambs. Now you could describe
I was
Hannibal
thinking-
Lecter as a movie monster. Now, to me, that doesn't fit my definition, but it might fit
No,
someone
see,
else's.
all right,
It doesn't fit mine. I was thinking more along the lines of Invasion of the Body Snatchers or something.
all right. So I would say no to Hannibal Lecter. That's more psychological.
Would you?
I would say Split. That guy
Yeah.
was a monster.
Would you say
Yeah.
aliens
Yes.
are monsters?
Yeah.
E.T. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
all aliens? I mean, I guess you could.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a
Sure.
it's a blurry line for sure.
Okay.
Hmm.
All right. Well, speaking of aliens, number one on my list, after putting some
Good segue.
serious thought into this,
Serious though.
the number one monster movie on my list is Alien, and to a lesser extent, Aliens, the sequel. Some people call Alien one of the greatest horror movies of all time, where Aliens is described as one of the greatest action flicks of all time. So even though the threat is similar, they're two different and distinct movies. But for the sake of argument, I'm going to kind of lump them together as a tie for number one on my list. Alien, I think, is one of the most intense, nail-biting, excruciating horror movies I've ever seen. The Alien, when this movie came out, the Alien was like unlike anything I'd ever seen in movies prior to it. The design and the fact that it wasn't, didn't have human characteristics other than two arms and two legs. It was just so unique and so different and absolutely terrifying. I mean, the Alien itself doesn't have a lot of screen time. It's that threat of the unknown and the being afraid of the dark and that sort of thing. So in my opinion, Alien/Aliens is the greatest monster movie of all time. With Aliens, the sequel, having some of the best lines of all time. If we were to ever do a podcast on the greatest movie lines, Aliens has a couple that come to mind, including "Get away from her, you bitch." So, in my opinion, that's the number one monster movie of all time. Ryan, what are your thoughts on the Alien movies?
Well, I'm not a big fan of them. I think part of the reason probably is when they came out and the age that I was when they came out. I just never got into it. Never revisited it as I got older. It's not something that, I know what it's about and everything, so it's not something I tackle. I will say that I like the spoofs, some of the spoofs that come out of it. Like Ready Player One had a pretty good Alien spoof.
Spaceballs.
Spaceballs was the first one I was going to mention. So, it definitely made its mark in cinematic history, but just all right for me.
And you made me think of something about Alien that made it so unique, is that the entire movie wasn't the big shiny black creature that H.R. Giger designed. It starts out with that face hugger, which ties into man's fear of having something attached to his face and rammed down his throat. I mean, that taps into a very primal fear, and then
Fear of being
that
raped.
creature. What's
Isn't
that?
even fear of being raped.
I mean, that's basically what they're tapping
Yeah,
into there.
Isn't that what you were for Halloween one year?
I did wear the alien
The
face
rapist?
hugger.
Oh,
No,
no.
no. I'll cut that part out.
He got
But then, after having that seed implanted from the face hugger, then there's that stage where it bursts out of the chest and is that larva stage, and then that stage evolves into the large 7-foot creature. So it's not just that one monster; it taps into all these primal fears. Tim, your thoughts on Alien/Aliens?
Yeah, the first Alien was a little bit before I was able to see movies like that. So I think I saw Aliens before I ever saw the original Alien.
Oh, wow.
Actually, I saw that at the theater. And yeah, I liked it. I mean, they're both really good movies. They've tapped that well so many times that that franchise is kind of dead. But yeah, it's a cool movie creature. I'm sure it was. I know it was terrifying, like to audiences, because I remember my dad telling me about it. Because they had gone and seen it, and he told me about the part where it popped out of his chest and ran across the room and other stuff like that. But yeah, good movies.
Yeah,
But
I would almost hate to have seen them in reverse order, because growing up, I was introduced to Alien first, and so you got this single creature who seems almost unstoppable. He picks off the crew one by one, and you go, "Oh my God, that was terrifying." And then the sequel comes out where there's huge hives, like this huge group of aliens, and it multiplies that terror factor by dozens. I'd rather see Alien first than Aliens.
You're right. I mean, I'm not like a huge fan of those movies, and that could be why. I mean, I like them, but I'm not like crazy about them. But that could be why, because I saw the second one before I saw the first one.
Right. Yeah, that would give you a different experience. Rich, what are your thoughts on the Alien movies?
Well, I loved the Alien ride at Disney World. It was scary. The
Yeah?
movies
Don't do anything for you?
Not so much. I mean, it was okay. I get it. I
Yeah.
wasn't excited about it.
Yeah. Well, Tim, like what you said about the franchise being run into the ground, I kind of got excited when they announced that Ridley Scott was coming back to do, was it Prometheus, the first one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
then-
I didn't hate Prometheus. I have
Yeah.
not seen Alien Covenant yet, but I know a lot of people were disappointed that it really didn't have a whole lot to do with. I mean, plus they changed stuff around. Like the space
Right.
Jackie was humongous. And
Yeah, I don't like what they've done with those prequels, I guess. And they came out with the expectation that they were going to answer questions, and they
just
didn't do
raised
that.
more questions. than
Yeah.
anything. Well, that was
Mhm.
not going to be. That was just like it was going to be its own movie that had nothing to do with the Alien franchise originally. And then somebody was like, "Hey, let's hook it up with the aliens." So I think they just tacked that on there at the end.
Right. All right. Well, let's move on to number 2. This easily could have been number 1 on my list. I really thought seriously about making this number 1. Is John Carpenter's The Thing, starring Kurt Russell. In my opinion, one of the most terrifying movies ever made. You get this alien life form that can take form of people next to you. It kind of replaces them, and you can't tell them apart from the real deal. I had never seen anything like it when it came out. It was so different than the black and white 50s movie. It had a completely different feel to it. Kurt Russell's performance was absolutely incredible. I was surprised to read recently that when The Thing came out, I guess it didn't do well at the box office. And that kind of surprises me, because I remember seeing it in the theater and loving it when I first saw it. Today, it has an enormous cult following, and I've talked to young people today who call it one of their favorite films of all time. And so the nature of the beast in this movie, Kurt Russell's performance, the movie as a whole, the effects, the real world effects, no CGI bullshit, makes this one of my favorite horror movies of all time, one of my favorite sci-fi movies of all time, and definitely one of the greatest monster movies of all time. Ryan, have you seen The Thing?
I don't think I have actually.
Well,
Oh.
I mean,
get
if
on
I
that.
did, I think I was really young when I did see it. So yeah, I don't have anything to add to this.
Timothy?
Yeah. I didn't make my top 10 only because I stuck to the original theme of that we talked about. So all my top 10 are going to be more the giant monster genre. Um, but yeah, The Thing, as far as horror movie goes, one of my favorite horror movies of all time. Just fantastic. And not only, well, I mean, the monster causes this, but the kind of the theme of that whole thing is you don't know who the monster is. I mean, you're in an enclosed area and you don't know who's the monster or who's not. Um, yeah, just I and that was another one that I don't think I saw until it was on cable, and but I just watch it over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's definitely one of my top 10, if not top 5, horror movies of all time.
Yeah, and the effects in that movie, like
Oh yeah,
when they're trying to revive the one guy with the paddles, and then his hands break through the chest, and the teeth close on his hands, and then they go to use the flamethrower on it, and then the head
the
comes
head
down and sprouts
the
legs.
and
And
scurries
it's
away
like,
like a giant
oh
spider.
my God! Like,
I
imagine
know.
being on that set, seeing them pull off these real world
Yeah.
effects. I don't think if they did that in CGI today, I don't think it would have the same impact as knowing that they performed those
No.
effects on the set and the actors
Right.
were able to see that unfold in front of them. It's just absolutely remarkable.
Mhm.
Rich, your thoughts on The Thing?
I can only comment on the original. I can't comment on the this one because I never saw it.
Wow, that's one of the greatest horror movies of all time.
But you have seen the original for real?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
The
when I
black and white?
I was
See, I've
young,
never
yeah,
even seen that. But wasn't that like a giant vegetable man?
basically.
Sort of, yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
I'll have to
Um,
check it out, but I haven't seen it.
all right, so that's number 2 on my list. Number 3, I'm not going to go into too much detail because we discussed this on a recent podcast. But on number 3, I made Jurassic Park my third favorite monster movie of all time. The T-Rex scene is an absolute classic. Every time I catch it airing on cable TV, I sit there and watch with anticipation for the T-Rex scene in the rain. I think it's one of the greatest movie moments of all time. I think the Raptors are great. So, looking at Jurassic Park as a monster movie, I think it's one of the greatest monster movies of all time, with some of the greatest monsters of all time, and has become a classic. Ryan, what were your thoughts on Jurassic Park as a monster movie?
0, because I never thought of it as a monster movie, and this kind of goes up to one of those what is and how it's different for each of us.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't look at it as a monster movie at all.
It has the
That's
elements of a
that
monster movie.
yeah,
though.
so I can't argue the fact, but to me, it's not. The scene in the rain with the T-Rex, that's total right out of Monster Movie 101. And again, another scene I just saw. I don't remember what movie it was. Maybe it was Rampage or Ready Player One, where they did the tremor in the water.
Oh, right.
Kind of paying tribute to Jurassic Park. So,
Hmm.
great movie, but yeah, for me, not a monster movie.
Just to add to the discussion, as I kind of composed my list and then narrowed it down, one of the movies I added to my list just for discussion was Jurassic World. I kind of went into Jurassic World, the not any of those Jurassic Park sequels. I'm talking about the Chris Pratt Jurassic World. I went in with kind of low expectations and thought it was a very fun movie and can also be considered a monster movie, but I think not to the level of Jurassic Park as far as a classic, but I thought it was kind of a fun monster movie. Tim, your thoughts?
I kind of agree with Ryan as far as it not being considered a monster movie, only because they're dinosaurs. But I would say that Jurassic World is a monster movie because they did the hybrid
Right.
and made them into monsters. And I would probably put, as far as monster movies go, I would probably put Jurassic World above Jurassic Park.
Hmm.
And I think I probably liked Jurassic World better than I liked Jurassic Park, honestly.
Okay.
And I'm really looking forward to this next one.
I can see that, even though there were some elements of Jurassic World that I question, like to make this carnivore, this T-Rex type beast, the ability to camouflage itself and become invisible. You're like, what is the logic behind that? Why would you do that? So Jurassic World has these major questions, but overall, I thought it was a lot of fun. Rich, your thoughts on Jurassic Park / Jurassic World as a monster movie
I think it would have been better if Steve Irwin was in it.
in Jurassic
Park,
Park?
or Jurassic World. I feel like a Discovery Channel type thing.
All
I
right.
think somebody forgot to give Rich his meds today.
I don't. Yeah, it's a monster movie, but I didn't like it. I don't like
Steve
it. I
Irwin
don't
had
like it
his
that
movie,
much.
okay?
You don't like
It was great.
You
too,
don't
by
like
the way.
what? You don't like Jurassic Park? You don't like
I just don't like
World?
Jurassic.
You don't
Any
like
of the
any of
Jurassic.
them?
I'm not big on the Jurassic Parks. For me, they're just like go see it one time, and that's
Wow.
all you need to see it.
I disagree. It speaks to the kid in me. I was obsessed with dinosaurs as a kid, and seeing Jurassic
Well,
Park
I mean,
on screen was a
You were
dream
born
come
that
true.
long after that they went extinct.
There you go. All right.
Wow.
All right, number 4 on my list. Again, boy, I had a tough time trying to narrow it down to my top 5 right now. But I'm going to go with Predator at number 4. Again, we're talking about a alien invader coming to Earth, hunting humans. You could argue whether or not this is a monster movie. It's definitely a sci-fi movie, an action flick, a horror movie. But I consider it a monster movie only because of the nature of the invader. This was classic Arnold, classic catchphrases, man versus beast, mano a mano. I watch this movie just about every time I catch it on cable TV. I just absolutely love it. Ryan, what are your thoughts on Predator as a monster movie?
It actually came in as number 3 on my list.
Oh, cool.
So, I definitely think he was a monster and had so many cool features, and especially for the time. The infrared heat sensing thing that was cool to see on screen. Like that was something kind of new and different in a movie, anyways, that I had seen. They did a great job of making this alien creature, whatever you want to call it, look really scary and intimidating, and it was something that I thought could kill everything, right? So I think it had all the right elements, and it was also a really good movie. And like you said, lots of cool quotes from Arnold, and it had a good supporting cast too.
Yeah, and what you said about thinking that it can kill anything, that's what makes the movie so great, is that Arnold's character is able to kind of bring it down to his level and then use his wits and brawn to try and outdo the creature. I think that's what makes it such a great movie. Tim?
I ain't got time to bleed.
Oh, that's one of my all-time favorite
That's what I
movie
should have said in the
lines.
beginning.
I ain't got time to bleed.
I will say this: while I was watching Rampage, I was thinking, if this movie came out in the '80s, Schwarzenegger would have been in it.
Mm-hmm.
It just, that's what it reminded me of. It reminded me of one of the, not as good Arnold Schwarzenegger movies that would have came out in the '80s when I was watching Rampage. But
Just like Kindergarten
Any-
Cop.
I don't know
Same-
if I've ever.
It would have
seen
been
that.
impossible, though, to
Your
pull
brains.
off Rampage in the 80s without using stop-motion animation or something. So,
Yeah, probably.
yeah.
Probably. But yeah, Predator, yeah, fantastic. Great movie. Jesse Ventura was in it. Can't beat that.
Mhm. Great cast, yeah.
Yeah, just good.
Rich?
Oh, man, Predator, great monster movie. Great. I mean, Arnold plays a great monster
Arnold plays a great monster.
in every movie. Look how huge he is. He's big. He's a monster. He's huge.
All right. Rich has brought a lot to the table today, hasn't he?
Yeah, sure has. We missed
All
you,
right.
buddy.
I'm going to wrap up my top 5 by bringing up a classic. Now,
Classic.
if you're going to discuss monster movies, you got to bring the Universal monsters into the discussion.
Yes.
Now, over the last decade or so, I've tried to revisit the classic Universal monsters. I watched Dracula, found it boring. Watched Frankenstein, found it kind of boring. Watched The Wolfman. I thought that one was a little bit better. But my favorite classic Universal monster is the creature from the Black Lagoon. I love everything about it. I love the sea creature lusting over the female character. I'm sure movies like Jaws and other movies like that borrowed a page of that whole what lurks beneath the surface of the water kind of fear that it tapped into. Absolutely loved Creature from the Black Lagoon. Obviously, it inspired The Shape of Water. My hands down favorite Universal monster movie of all time. Ryan, your thoughts on Universal monsters? Did they play a role in your life growing up? Do you have any favorites?
We're switching gears a little bit here?
Well, no, we're still talking about monster movies, but where do the classic Universal monsters fall in your love for movies?
They fall by the wayside. Don't really care for any of the ones that you just named off. Not, I mean, obviously they've remade and done some okay movies, based off those characters or with those characters, but
Hotel Transylvania.
exactly.
I recently revisited Bride of Frankenstein, which most people consider one of the greatest classic monster movies of all time, and I didn't get it. I was like, really? I don't see this being one of the greatest monster movies of all time. I thought it was silly. I thought it was corny. So yeah, it doesn't really hold up for me.
You know what? I don't. You'll have to tell me if this. I mean, age plays a part in this question that you talked about. So, a movie that I used to watch as a kid and get a little freaked out about, and I just looked up. It's not on my list, but I remember it very vividly. Is Swamp Thing, and I used to love Swamp Thing.
I still love it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I haven't watched it in I might still, but I haven't watched it in so long. Like I couldn't tell you details about it, but that was
That's a superhero movie.
Is it?
Well,
To you?
it can be both, but it was in my top 10 superhero movies.
Yeah.
Like, I totally forgot about it until you just started talking about those older.
I do
older
have
kids.
the unedited version if you'd like to borrow
I
it.
would like to borrow it.
Now the problem I have with Swamp Thing being considered a monster movie, even though I would listen to an argument, but my problem is that he's not really a threat to Adrian Barbeau or like the main character. He's a threat to the bad guys, and so it's kind of a twist, I guess, on the monster movie theme. Is
Bad
that
guys are people
he's-
too.
But is it
Well,
can
there,
a,
there
It's all
was,
perspective.
Technically, there was a bad guy that was a monster.
Oh, that's right. They did have a rival toward the end there.
Yeah.
But that brings up the question: can the monster be a hero in a monster movie?
I would say,
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
I would say definitely.
I mean,
Um,
if Arnold could be a good guy in Terminator 2, then
Yeah.
why can't a monster be a
Uh,
good guy? Beauty and the Beast, that's a monster. Come on.
Another monster movie.
Could be, yeah. All right. So, Tim, did you want to chime in on the classic Universal
one of
monster
my
movies?
I like Creature from the Black Lagoon. I'm a little scarred because I don't know if you remember like the big deal in the 80s when Count Scary was going to be showing it in
Ooh,
3D.
That's scary.
Oh yeah,
And you
yeah. It
had
was
to get your
originally released.
The blue on the
3D
left,
glass.
the
Yeah,
red on
remember
the right.
you were supposed to be able to watch it on TV.
Yeah,
It did not work.
yeah.
I remember like looking forward to that for like a month.
Ooh,
It didn't work at all, so
That's
I was a little
scary.
disappointed. My favorite Universal monster is probably the Invisible Man, but I don't know if I would. I don't know if I could say that's my favorite Universal movie, but I don't know if I could really consider him a monster.
Yeah.
But what about Monster Squad?
That I have on my list to discuss. But before we
Okay.
get to Monster Squad,
right.
you just made me think of something. Actually, one of my favorite Universal monster movies of all time, and I'm kind of kicking myself for not ranking this higher, is Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein.
Mhm.
That was the movie that put Dracula, Frankenstein, and the Wolfman, two of the
Yes.
three of those played by the original actors who played him in the other versions, against Abbott and Costello. And that's one of my all-time favorite movies, period. And it's something I have to watch every Halloween. I actually love that movie. So, Rich?
I love Long Chaney.
Yep.
And I love all the Universal monster movies. I have not watched them in a long time. And you guys talking about it, and I'm like, this Halloween, I'm sitting down and watching them all.
Yeah. I recommend it. I think we should have a Universal movie marathon
I'd be down for that.
when Halloween rolls around. All right, so that's enough for my list for now. I did my top 5. If we get around to any of the other movies on my list, I'll throw them out there. But let's move on to Ryan. What is number 1 on your list of favorite monster movies of all time?
Number one, very scary for me as a kid growing up, was Gremlins. Um, a lot of awesome aspects. I loved Gizmo. I loved, I had the little plush doll that they had. I was scared out of my mind. For the yeah, I was not a fan of the actual Gremlins themselves. They and the scene where they're like in the shop and they're in all the pods at the end there, like that freaked me out. And of course, Gizmo being the hero driving the Barbie car was hilarious. And,
Well, that's the thing about Gremlins. It was scary. It was funny.
Yeah.
It had a lot going for it.
right, yeah, good story and good. Like even the the dad with his voice, like
Yeah, Hoyt
Help-
Axton. He was a country singer.
did a great job, carrying the film with
Yeah.
the narration of it. So
Yeah.
just all around a great movie. So,
Yeah,
that's
that
my
was
favorite.
that was a great movie. I remember one thing. Tell me how you guys feel about this. I remember when I saw it in the theaters, I was loving the movie, but there was one moment that I thought was so bizarre, and so weird. When the mom pushes the gremlin into the microwave and then turns it on,
I love
and the
that.
microwave or the gremlin explodes in the microwave. I remember sitting in the theater going, "What the hell was
Oh,
that?"
I loved it. I thought it was awesome.
How else,
and
I mean, how else are you going to combat the gremlins in the kitchen?
and then it's like I thought it was great. And
She turned into the aggressor. Like she turned
Right.
into a serial killer in that scene. She had the knife.
Yeah.
I loved it.
It was a great movie. Great movie.
Yeah.
And of course, every time I put something in the microwave after that, and like if it popped, I was like, "Oh, gremlin!"
Yeah, I think that's sort of more of a public service announcement than anything. It's-
Oh, sure. Yeah, don't dry off your gerbil
don't be
in the
sticking-
microwave, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah,
Oh,
I was like a
floppy.
little bit older when Gremlins came out, so I wasn't scared of it, but I liked it okay. I honestly I really like Gremlins too. And I mean it's so goofy and ridiculous, but I love that movie. I
Gizmo
think I
becomes
like
Rambo.
Gremlins
Mogwai.
2 better than the original Gremlins.
Was it Key and Peele that did a sketch about the creation of Gremlins 2, where they had like a
I'm not sure.
board meeting and they had all these people sitting around the board and they were throwing out the craziest ideas. And at the
That's
end of the
possible.
sketch, they said every single one of these ideas was actually used in the movie. It's so batshit crazy.
It is, but I love it. Hulk Hogan's in it.
There
know,
we go.
can't go
There
wrong
we
with that.
go.
I'm gonna have to revisit Gremlins 2. It's been a long, long time, but now you got me curious.
Put it on the
about
list.
It. Yeah,
It's a great comedy.
Gizmo's dancing around. It's like a dance.
Rich,
Good.
what are your thoughts on Gremlins?
Love Gremlins.
Yeah.
It was actually scared me when I was a kid. And the funny thing is, as I got older, I dated a girl, and if you actually put
Big
the
news.
you put the song on, she would start crying.
Which song?
The she'd start crying,
Like
or
the theme?
Freeze frame from
the
Jay
theme.
Giles?
No, the
Oh.
theme to Gremlins. And if you sat there and made the voice, I'd sit there and I go,
Christmas song. What was that
Gizmo.
Christmas song?
She would start crying out of
Wow,
fear.
song
It's like, it
interesting.
really affected her.
Wow.
I don't remember the Christmas song.
Oh, I don't know.
All right,
right.
Ryan, what's number 2 on your list?
Number 2 on my list. I'm probably gonna get some
Here we go.
guff.
Were there any monsters in Rad?
Yes, there was. Okay. Rad Racing was a great show. No, Monsters Inc. is my number 2. And yeah, it's not scary to anybody, and they were lovable characters, but
They're
damn it, they're
monsters.
monsters. It's in the title.
Yeah.
I just think it's an overall great movie, and it shows them scaring the kids, and how you can look at yourself and think you're a good guy, but then you see yourself in your actions, and it can change your opinion. And
I can't argue with you there. I mean, I wouldn't put it on my list,
that's
but
why
I
it's on my
totally
list.
see where you're coming from.
Totally.
Tim, do you agree with Ryan on this one?
Sure.
Mhm.
Not fake news, but I took a date to see that movie because I wanted to see the trailer for Phantom Menace because that was
It revolves around
I
Star
thought you were
Wars.
gonna say you wanted her to.
Yeah, later.
You were going to take her to a movie where she was gonna grab you with the scary parts.
no, that didn't happen. But yeah, I remember like they were showing that in front of. So I was like, hey, let's go see Monsters Inc. Anyway, yeah, I do like Monsters Inc. a lot. I probably haven't seen it since I saw it in the theater, but I should probably buy it for my daughter because she's got a little Randall
Nice.
toy that I terrorize
what a
all
great
her other
villain.
toys with.
Always watching.
Isn't there a sequel coming out to it here pretty soon?
Yeah.
What?
Well, there
already
was
Well,
already
they did
one.
Monsters
Monsters
University.
I think there's another one coming
Is there
out.
another
Which
one
was
coming
great also. By the
Did
way.
John Goodman and Billy Crystal come back for Monsters
I
Yes.
believe so.
Yes, they did.
Okay. I never saw that one. I'm embarrassed to admit.
I've
Oh, it
seen
was good.
parts of
It
it.
was
I've never
good.
seen the whole thing.
It was good. You guys missing out
Okay,
on.
I'll
all these
check
good
it out.
ones.
I liked it. I enjoyed it.
Monsters Inc.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
I don't know where.
That's
where-
about all I can say about
We'll
it.
have to revisit. Like, we're going to discuss Pixar movies one of these days, and we'll find out where it ranks among Pixar's finest. But
Hmm.
all right, yeah,
That's different.
I'll allow it. All right, what's number three?
Number
Thank
3,
God.
we already talked
We
about.
talked about
was
that.
Predator.
4?
Number 4, you and I talked briefly about this. Is it a monster movie or not? I chose Jaws because I do feel like it's a monster movie. It terrorized people. People were afraid to go into the water. The poster is freaky still to this day.
One of the most iconic movie posters of all time.
Absolutely. So, and I don't ever want to go swimming with the sharks. Maybe if I was in one of those enclosed cages, but I just had a friend go and she swam with a shark that was in Australia, and she was not in a cage, and I'm like, you're crazy. Like, yeah, absolutely terrifying. I don't know if I love this movie on its like just to sit down on Saturday and watch it or whatever, but
Oh, I do. I
I know
watch
it-
it every time.
yeah,
I
I
just
know
watched
you do,
Jaws 2
but-
the other day.
But as far as a monster and terror, Jaws is right there at number 4 for me.
I had it in my top 5, and then I kind of moved things around, and I debated whether it qualified as a monster movie. But if I was to expand my list to top 10, then Jaws would be on there. I think it's one of the scariest movies ever made. I cramp up when I watch it. It's just so intense.
Right.
Tim, does Jaws qualify as a monster movie?
Sure. Yeah, I would put
Not
that
a
in there.
sure
It's
Yeah,
a
okay.
it's a monster
Sure, why
shark.
not?
It's a monster shark. And speaking of monster sharks, have you guys seen the trailer for The Meg?
The Meg.
No.
That
No.
looks-
Except for the
You guys haven't seen it?
megalodon? No.
Yeah.
Oh, I did see
Jason
that actually.
Statham's in it.
Okay.
It's coming out.
Yeah.
It's coming out. I think this summer. It
There's a-
looks awesome.
You know
Who's
what?
the girl in
I
it?
saw it in
Who's the
print.
girl in it.
I
It's a very
matter.
attractive woman.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, look that up. No, I saw the Meg like in text. I had no idea what it was referring to. I'm like, what is that?
That was a book
About Meg
it was-
Ryan's plastic surgery?
This book, yeah. No, she looks like a monster.
Oh,
This in
man.
Seattle. Oh, Ruby Rose.
She's
Ruby
in it too?
Rose.
I don't know who that
Okay.
is.
You
Yeah,
don't know who
I-
Ruby Rose is?
No.
How do you not know who she
I was
is?
disappointed with Pacific Rim Uprising. I was disappointed with Rampage. So hopefully, Jurassic World 2 and The Meg can fulfill my monster movie needs for
Alright.
2018.
Rich, does Jaws qualify as a monster movie?
Jaws is number 2 on my list.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
And yeah, I think it opened up a new like this discussion of monster movies. I think it expanded the monster movies into like live actual creatures.
Yeah.
Like the great like shark. It's a monster of the ocean to,
Yeah.
to a lot of people. It's scary.
All right, and number 5?
So number 5, I had I debated. I went back and forth with things like, I had Pete's Dragon, but I'm like, is that really a monster movie? I don't know if it is. I saw it on a couple lists, but
Sure.
I'm like, Little Shop of Horrors is another one that I was like, that's kind of fun and goofy. But sitting here talking to you guys, I came up with my number 5. I had just forgotten about this movie. It's They Live.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of a forgotten gem. Like
Yeah.
you said, you forgot about
Yeah, I
it.
forgot about it, and just and like, how could you forget about alien boobies? So I mean,
And
that's why I love that movie.
I will never understand how Roddy Piper wasn't able to parlay that into an action movie star.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Hell comes to Frogtown, my friend.
Whoa.
You watch
Whoa,
your
whoa, whoa,
language.
whoa, whoa.
No, like, I think he
Find your
could
tone of
he could have been right up there with Stallone and Schwarzenegger and everything, and I don't know why that never panned out for him, but his performance in They Live is fantastic and one of the great all-time catchphrases. I came here to kick ass and chew gum, and I'm all out of gum. That's a great
Mhm.
line.
And way overused after
I don't know.
Oh, yeah,
I don't know
that's
how he
true.
didn't get nominated.
For what?
a
Best
Razzie.
actor.
Okay.
Academy Award.
Yeah,
Hey,
righty.
come on.
One of the longest fight scenes ever on film, I believe. The alley fight between him and Keith David.
Is it?
Yeah.
Do you remember how many minutes?
I
Is it?
don't, but but even then, I was like, oh my god, this is going on.
Can you cite your source for
That's
that?
right.
And I
Didn't-
want to say,
Isn't that the whole Family Guy with the chicken thing? They're trying to beat that.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
It
I-
can't be longer than the fight in Superman. That Superman movie. Jeez.
maybe not.
Oh my
maybe not. But it
God.
just seemed
At
like
the
it
time,
went on.
though.
At the time, yeah,
Yeah,
it just
yeah.
seemed like it went on forever. But
Yeah.
anyway, I think I read later that Piper choreographed that whole scene.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Rich,
Him
they
and
live.
Paula Abdul.
Any
I love
thoughts?
Roddy Roddy Piper, man. I love that movie. That was a great movie. Good monster movie. Good pick, Ryan. Good
Thanks. Thanks,
All
man.
right.
I think we've established something here today, or at least discovered something, that there's a lot of pro wrestlers in monster movies.
There
pick.
is.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they are
Like-
monsters of the ring.
There you go.
That is true. Yeah.
All right, Tim. Have we touched on your number one yet?
No, I don't think so.
Let's
No,
hear it.
we have
Um,
not.
And like I said, I'm sticking with the original thing with the giant monsters. That's just one of my favorite genres of movies.
Mhm.
So my number one is Godzilla 1954.
Mhm.
This really kind of encompasses the whole Godzilla thing, because really this is not my favorite Godzilla movie, but because it's the first one. But I mean, there's been 30
Mm.
or something like that. So there's some other ones that would be at the top of my list. But when this came out, I mean, Godzilla was the villain. It didn't take too long, and I don't know, but I think that this might have been one of the first villains in movie history that kind of did the Freddy Krueger and the Jason thing, that turned, and they started making him almost like the hero.
Right.
And people started cheering him. I
Yeah.
mean, obviously, Godzilla became the hero, started fighting all the other monsters. But
Yeah, that's kind of my memory of Godzilla. This probably is before your time, but when I used to come home from school, I would look forward to the 4 o'clock movie. I was on Channel 7, and they would do theme weeks. There was Elvis Week. There was
no, this is not before my time.
Okay, good. All
It's
right.
not even before
I
my
remember,
time.
I remember doing
So,
the same thing.
I looked
Yes.
forward to Godzilla Week,
Yes.
and that's how I was introduced to Godzilla. I don't think
Same-
I
same
saw
with me.
the 54 version until later, but
Mhm.
Baby Godzilla and
Mhm.
Monster Island and all that stuff, man, I
Yeah.
loved that
Yeah.
stuff as a kid.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Destroy All Monsters is probably one of my all-time favorites, and that originally was gonna be the end of Godzilla. The whole giant monster thing in Japan was starting to die off, so that was gonna be it. They were gonna throw every monster in there at the end, and that was gonna be it. But then it made money,
Right.
so they were like, "Oh,
If
well,
something
we can
makes money, they're
keep
going to come
tapping
back.
this,
Yeah.
keep tapping this well." And I was watching last night. I was watching Godzilla versus the Smog Monster, or Hedorah, and I don't know if you guys have ever seen that one, but
Mhm.
it is
Vaguely remember that one.
it's totally bizarre, but it's I mean, really, and a lot of things that I didn't realize as a kid, I realize now watching them. Almost every one of them has some kind of a theme, some kind of a moral to the story. That one is obviously about pollution. The one with Gabara and
I love Gamera.
Minya Gabara, not
Oh, Gabara.
yeah,
I said Gamera, the
No.
flying turtle.
no,
I love
Gabara
Gamera.
is about bullying, actually.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, the first
but-
one is about dangers of radioactivity and nuclear
yeah,
war.
exactly. So every
Yeah.
one of them has. I don't think Monster Island really did. I think they just do that in there just to have a big battle royal with all the monsters. But
Yeah. And quickly, what did you think of the Matthew Broderick remake and then the
not
recent remake?
Not a fan of those. Actually, when I was watching Rampage, I was just thinking that Americans I don't think can grasp the kaiju concept.
Yeah.
We invented it.
We
Did it-
well, technically, yeah, and that'll be my number
Okay.
2. But
Oh, right. All right, let's do that. Let's because yeah,
okay,
we could segue into number 2 right
yeah,
now.
my number 2 is King Kong 1933. Just, I mean, for what they did in 1933, just amazing, really.
It is.
and just
Stop
to
motion
stand the
and-
test of time.
And the rear screen projection and I mean, I think people forget that in the original King Kong, there was a kick-ass dinosaur fight that
Yeah,
I
Right.
can imagine being a kid in the theater going,
right.
this is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was
totally,
sweet.
Yeah.
totally. Then later on, the Peter Jackson one was okay. I mean, they've remade it a bunch of times, but
You know what?
I do love
Since
Kong Skull
since you
Island.
brought up Peter Jackson, I really enjoyed that movie. I know some people say that
I just
Jack
thought it was a
Black was
little-
miscast, but I really, really enjoyed that film.
My only knock on it was a little bit of overkill.
Mm.
It was just too much with the fight with the two T-Rexes, and then the stampedes, and it was just, and then the fight, and then when they're shooting all the giant insects, it was just too much.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep.
King Kong, a classic. Do you guys want to chime in on King Kong at all?
Love King Kong. Still have the action figure. It's one of my favorites.
King Kong ain't got nothing on me. That's all I got on King Kong. I wasn't a
What's that from?
Training Day. Denzel.
Oh, I never saw Training Day.
Gee, come on.
My goodness.
No, I
And
not something I got into.
King Kong Bundy was not in that movie.
Then I might have liked it. Might have liked
Pacific.
He was in Popeye.
My number 3 is Pacific Rim, and I initially didn't really like it because it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. I didn't realize that it was going to be more futuristic. The trailers, for some reason, I thought was going to be a more realistic take, if there can be a more realistic take on kaiju movies. But then when I saw it, it was more science fiction-y and more futuristic. But now that I've seen it again, I like it, and I think it's what a lot of people have wanted. The giant mechanical suits fighting the giant monsters.
Yeah. I love Pacific Rim. I went in not knowing what to expect. I saw it in 3D, and
I
I
did too.
have vivid memories of being wowed by the 3D. I thought the 3D effects in Pacific Rim were spectacular, and I found
Oh, yeah.
myself really enjoying this movie from beginning to end, and I own it on Blu-ray, and I love it.
Yeah.
Do you guys want to chime in on Pacific Rim?
Never saw it.
Never saw it.
Wow. All right, you guys got to see it.
Pacific Rim Uprising, don't bother to see.
Yeah,
I will say
unfortunately,
that.
different
That-
director.
Yeah, that was
Guillermo del
disappointing.
Toro did the first one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think he executive produced this one, and the story was based on something he wrote, but it just it's
Didn't fly, huh?
Isn't
no,
it? So the premise is there's people like in a room like us fighting, and then there's actual machines fighting.
No, the people are
people are in the
inside the
suits.
machines,
Inside.
like
Yeah,
kind of like
okay.
the old
Kinda
Like Iron
makes
Man?
me-
cartoons.
Well,
Sort of, but
kind
bigger
of like
scale.
what was it?
Real steel.
Voltron.
Oh, Voltron.
more like
Yeah.
Voltron, I would say.
Right.
But they
Okay.
but they like meld minds, kind of drift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Call it?
Called Drift.
Yeah.
They work
Tokyo.
in conjunction.
have
and
to work.
operate different parts of the giant robot.
They gotta do it like a synchronized dance.
Right.
Okay.
Okay,
All
my,
right.
no, my number 4, and this is mainly just because it was kind of like a shakeup to the genre. Cloverfield, because what they did with this one was definitely tried to do more of a realistic take. Because if this ever really did happen, their reasoning for this movie was you would not see everything that this monster did.
Right.
You would just see it on TV or whatever. I mean, at one point he does come face to face with the monster, but it's a found footage movie. I will say that.
Yeah,
But,
and I'm embarrassed to admit I haven't seen this movie, and I think part of the reason that I haven't seen it is because I felt like the found footage gimmick had been played out by that point.
well, I agree
and-
with you, but I think it worked. for
And
this one.
and I've heard great things about it, and for some reason I've never gotten around
well,
to
don't
see
go
it,
in. Don't go in expecting it to be great.
Right.
It's good. I mean, it's a good giant monster movie, and
and it spawned a kind of a Cloverfield universe, right? Where
Yeah.
now there's movies
Yes.
coming out that sort of take part in
Yeah.
that Cloverfield universe.
yeah, whatever that one was with John Goodman, Cloverfield
Yeah.
Lane. That
10
was,
Cloverfield.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
I that might even be better than the original Cloverfield.
Yeah.
But as far as like me being on the edge of my seat and everything,
Yeah.
but
I gotta see those.
that was actually directed by Matt Reeves, who is going to direct the new Batman movie, and he directed War and Dawn of the Planet of the Apes.
Okay.
But
Busy guy.
And number 5.
number 5 is a Norwegian movie that came out in 2010 called Troll Hunter, and it's another found footage movie, but it
How come I'm the only one that gets the toilet flushing noise?
he's never seen it. No, come on, he never.
Oh,
You said it was a Norwegian movie. Right there should have been like.
They dub it. I assume
It
you
might
guys
be
haven't
good.
seen it, but you should check it out. It's pretty good.
Actually, I've seen this movie.
You did see Troll Hunter?
No, I'm totally bullshitting.
All right, Tim, I'm going to throw this out at you. When Halloween rolls around, bring Troll Hunter over. I will sit down and watch it with you.
Okay.
I will too, eh?
All right.
Can I bring Rad?
No.
No.
I will walk out of that movie in my own apartment. All right, we got about 10 minutes left in the podcast,
Okay.
so we want to get to Richie. Number
right.
1 on your monster movie list.
Star Wars because the Wookiee.
Jesus
I'm just
Christ.
kidding. Just kidding.
You're gonna walk out on me.
I'm just kidding. Actually, my number 1, you guys are not going to agree. I enjoy it. I love it. Harry and the Henderson.
Well, no,
I
it
love
came up
Harry.
earlier, and
love
I
Harry.
have no problem with it.
No, I loved
I
Harry and the
actually
Hendersons.
really liked it, and believe it or not, if we do a podcast on movies that made me cry,
Oh my god!
Harry and the Hendersons
Jeez,
made me
I won't
cry.
I won't have any.
Run
when
free,
John-
little Bob, run free.
Yeah, when John Lithgow like punches him in the face to like send him away. Oh my god, I got teary eyed.
And we already covered my number 2. And number 3 is Kong Skull Island. I loved it.
What was your
surprised-
number? What was your number
Really?
2?
Jaws.
Jaws.
Okay.
Tim, I'm surprised you didn't bring up Kong Skull Island.
I have that as my number 6 actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you liked it that much, man?
Oh, I did.
I almost walked out of it.
I
You
don't
gotta
know.
be kidding me.
It almost could be number 1.
You liked it?
I did not like it.
Yeah.
Wow.
I
You guys bumped your
I loved
heads or
it.
something.
I mean, as
Uh-huh.
far as like that genre of movie goes, I think that was exactly what it needed to be.
Yeah.
Friday the 13th, because when I was little, my dad called it a monster movie.
Wow.
It
I
scared
don't.
me.
Horror movie, yes. Monster movie.
Freddy was a monster to me.
That's pretty borderline.
Dad said,
What do you guys think? Is Friday the 13th a monster movie?
For me, it is not.
Oh,
I would
But
not,
I
I
can't-
would not consider it.
But I have movies on here that, like I wouldn't go to war with anybody over it. But to me, it's a horror movie.
Yeah, it's a slasher flick.
That's what I would classify it as. Maybe Jason X.
Is that the one that was in space?
Yes.
that was what, 4?
He was like some supersized, like they had done something to him where
I don't know
he
how
was
many-
like some.
Different ways they were able to bring that guy back to life.
Yeah, no.
Well, number 5, of course, is all the Universal monsters. Was my number 5. I loved all of them.
Okay.
So.
I'll allow it. Now, with the last few minutes we have
Glad you
left,
would.
let me throw out a couple of titles. We touched on some of these. Monster Squad. I recently revisited Monster Squad. It came out in 1987. Halloween was rolling around. I was looking for something to watch. Picked it up on DVD, popped it in, and freaking loved this movie.
Yep, I own it on DVD. I love it as well.
Let's see. You touched on American Werewolf in London.
That was good.
I think it's might be one of the greatest werewolf movies of all time, if not the greatest werewolf movie of
I
all
liked
time.
American Werewolf in Paris.
Really?
Uh,
I liked the.
I wasn't
Personally.
crazy about that one, but yeah,
Yeah.
the American Werewolf in London is probably my favorite horror movie of all time. Honestly,
Here's one that could have just been outside my top 5, definitely in my top 10. The Fly, 1986 version with Jeff Goldblum. Love Story Gone Wrong. Incredible performance by Jeff Goldblum. One of the greatest horror movies of all time, and definitely one of the greatest monster movies of all time. Anyone want to chime in on The Fly?
I like both. I like the original and that one. I
Yeah,
thought, to me, they
classics.
were just classics.
I even like the one with Eric Stoltz.
Ooh.
Oh, really? Fly 2.
I didn't
All right.
mind it.
And then I'm going to throw this one out just for conversation. Creep Show, 1982.
I love Creepshow.
Monster in the Box with Adrienne Barbeau.
That's a fun monster.
Great,
Yeah,
fun
I love Creepshow.
movie.
Second one not as great, but still okay. But
Mhm.
yeah,
Right.
Creepshow is amazing.
Yeah. Anything else you guys want to throw out that might have made your top 10 that we haven't touched on?
Well,
Have you guys? Oh, go ahead.
oh
I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
Has anybody else seen Eight-Legged Freaks?
I saw that once. That has what David Arquette was. Courtney Cox wasn't that. She was in Scream.
It
right?
was Kari Wuhrer who looked amazing in
Oh,
it.
she used to be on Remote Control,
Yes,
right?
and she
Yeah.
was like the town sheriff, and yeah, she was nice in it.
You know what's interesting about Eight-Legged Freaks and Scream is I'm not a fan of Arquette. Is it David Arquette?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he always seems to pull it off in the movies. He was good in
Mhm.
Eight-Legged Freaks. He was great in Scream.
Yeah.
But I haven't
Yeah.
seen it in a long time. But I remember seeing it and going, it was pretty darn good.
Yeah, I remember like reading the review on Harry Knowles' site, Ain't It Cool News, and in that review, he said if you have a drive-in near you, this is like the perfect movie to go see.
Yeah.
Well, I hadn't been to the drive-in since probably Jurassic Park and Army of Darkness, so I looked it up, and that was playing at the drive-in up by my house with one of the Austin Powers movies, which I think I had already seen. But yeah, it was a great movie to see at the drive-in.
A lot of these movies, when you think about it, monster movies, horror movies, those are the perfect movies to see at the drive-in. And I'm saddened by the fact that we don't really have one near us anymore. What's the closest drive-in in the?
Probably the
Flint.
US 23.
Where's
in
that
Flint.
located?
In,
Oh, up in Flint?
Yeah,
Okay.
like right on the
Border.
border of Burton and Flint.
Yeah.
Now they have 3 screens. I was just looking at it. They're open, and they got some pretty good combinations this weekend. I don't remember what they were, but I think I've seen most of them
White,
already.
it's White Christmas and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
No, but they added I know they added a 3rd screen a couple years ago, and I've been up there I think once or twice. The Miracle Twin was my go-to, but they closed down.
That was the one off
That
of
was the one in Burton.
Burton.
right off
Yeah,
of,
yeah. I think you introduced me to that one, and let me share a quick story about that. I remember you invited me to go along with you to see something at the drive-in, but then you brought your wife at the time, and so you two sat in the front seat, and I sat in the back seat, and we were supposed to sit in lawn chairs, but it was like too cold to sit in lawn chairs. So I'm in the back seat with the rearview mirror right in the center of the screen, like crouched down, trying to watch this goddamn movie with you two in the front seat.
The ultimate
You could have
voyeur.
hopped up front. I don't remember what the second movie was, but I do remember one of them was the remake of Dawn of the Dead.
Hmm.
I don't remember what the other one was, though.
Howard the Duck. That's another great monster movie. Come on.
Yeah. In fact, I used to watch Howard the Duck after watching Little Shop of Horrors when I was younger.
That monster was
Like, for some
scary.
reason all the time.
Ed Rooney, when he was a monster, that was scary.
Ed Rooney and Ferris Bueller.
He played in
Oh.
Howard the Duck.
All right. Anything else you guys want to throw out before we wrap it up? Rich, got anything else to bring to the
No,
table?
You know, I was gonna throw out Little Shop of Horrors, but I managed to do it. So
Well, which one, the original or the
Rick
remake?
Moranis, Rick Moranis
Yeah.
version.
Yeah,
I love that
absolutely.
one.
Steve Martin.
Steve
Yeah.
Martin, felt like kind of stole that movie.
Oh, yeah.
He was great. Cause I'm a dentist.
Damn.
Audrey was spectacular in that movie. Really amazing puppetry work in that.
Yeah.
I lament
I
the days of pre CGI horror films where everything had to be figured out there
I w-
on the set.
I would have liked that movie a million times better if they would have left the original ending the way it was.
What remind us what the original ending is?
Audrey 2.
Yeah, because
Went-
the girl was named.
yeah,
Audrey,
went-
right, yeah.
Just ended up growing and eating him and her, and then ended up taking over the city.
That's how the play ends. Yeah.
And then how did the remake end?
Some happy Hollywood crap. They like were holding hands and running through
Yay.
How dare you be happy?
running through a flower field with the sun shining down. I don't know. I don't remember, but it was something like that.
Then there's some animated monsters out there like Stitch from Lilo and Stitch.
Yeah.
I love Stitch.
I love
What about Enemy Mine?
Mm.
That goes back. That's
Oh,
Louis
yeah.
Gossett. Is that Louis Gossett? I
That
can't
was-
believe I pulled
Thank you
that
for
out.
mentioning that because I was trying to remember the name of that movie and I ended up buying The Last Starfighter thinking that was it.
Oh.
And I was watching it and I was like, wait a minute, I don't remember like this happening.
I actually
That's a
like
good
the
movie,
Last
too.
Starfighter, and the spaceship kind of turned me on a little bit. You remember the
In The
spaceship?
Last Starfighter.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Turned you
wasn't
on.
that Last
I just
Starfighter?
watched it, but I don't
Some
remember.
weird fetish.
Did I
I'd
just
like-
hear him right?
You
So
guys
now
will
he's a
have to-
voyeur in the back
Wait,
seat.
I
He's
do me a
looking
favor,
for star. for-
For those of you listening, Google the Last Starfighter spaceship or whatever, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. It's so blatant.
Was
It's
that the movie you're
so
watching in the
really
back
obvious
seat
in
when
your
Tim and
face,
his
yeah.
wife are up front?
I hope I'm getting
Making
my
out,
movie.
watching,
I-
whatever at
I
the
hope I'm
drive-in?
not mixing up my movies. I'm pretty
Tim's
sure it's the
making out with
Last
his wife.
Starfighter.
Joe's making out with his little action figure.
Oh
Yeah.
no! You know what?
The
It
Millennium
was, I'm
Falcon.
sorry. I'm correcting myself. It wasn't Last Starfighter. It was Battle Beyond the Stars with John Boy. Battle Beyond the Stars.
Waltons.
The
So,
Waltons?
so do that, listeners.
Okay. I'll have to
Google
look
Battle
it
Beyond the Stars ship,
up. Okay,
and
that sounds like that they would have purposely tried to titillate the young audience
pardon the
with
pun.
with the way that the ship looked. Just want to throw one out here because
Real quick, 'cause we're
I know
running
you
out of
love them. Gamera.
Gamera, love Gamera.
Godzilla.
Flying
Mothra.
turtle,
the
the
super
good
powered
guy.
turtle.
All right, thank you for listening to
Oh,
Movies for Dumb Guys.
Just real quick, Screonk is the noise that Godzilla makes in the comics.
Do you know how they made his noise?
No.
Godzilla's noise? A rusty gate. It's a rusty gate is Godzilla's noise.
Hence, Screonk.
Isn't that a sex
Pretty
move?
We'll see you next time on Movies for Dumb Guys. Good night, everybody.